election. So I'm so excited to welcome our next guest to the show. We have Mike Hurst, who is the chairman of Mississippi GOP, former U.S. attorney, and I have to tell the listeners, again, I can't get away from the voting theme, voters and listeners of this show, was delivered by my grandfather back in Newton County, Mississippi.
That's right.
That's
He's a big 12-pound boy.
That's right.
He's a big
old boy. Good morning, Mandy. How are you?
I'm great, and it's good to have you with us today. There's so many things I want to talk about. You may have just heard we had Marie Sanderson on. Her and her husband, Brian, have really been helping on the campaign front for President Trump. We're leading in 2 weeks to the election, trying to build momentum, certainly emotionally in the media, but also in the realm of campaign dollars as well. You're the chairman of Mississippi GOP. We are a Republican state. People often refer to as Mississippi as deep red. As a party going into this election, how would you say that, from your perspective as chairman, we're doing to support the conservative cause, represent the voters, and make sure President Trump is really ready to go these last 2 weeks?
Absolutely. Great question. And before I answer it, let me just give a thanks and a shout out to Marie and Brian Sanderson. Their home was beautiful. The event was beautiful. Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders came down, raised a lot of money for President Trump and Vice President Vance. Just an incredible event. And throughout the state, I tell you what the Mississippi Republican Party is doing. We're trying to really do three things. Mobilize the vote. We have a lot of voters who want to not just get to the polls, want to make sure their vote counts, their families' votes count, their friends' votes count, and that's first and foremost what we do as a Republican Party. But the second thing we're doing this cycle is we're facilitating and help coordinating people who want to get involved in campaigns. So, we have a very contentious, very close Mississippi Supreme Court judicial race here in central Mississippi. We have a longtime liberal justice on the Supreme Court, and we have an incredible conservative candidate, Jennifer Branning, state senator from Neshoba County, who's running. And a lot of people, like in North Mississippi or in Southwest Mississippi, they may not have a really contentious campaign going on right now. So we're connecting those individuals, those grassroots volunteers that want to get involved. But we're also helping individuals who want to help President Trump get elected. We know Mississippi is going to go red. As you said, we're a deep red state. But at the same time, we know those seven battleground states are key to ensure President Trump gets elected. And so we're helping coordinate folks to Georgia, to North Carolina, to Wisconsin, to Michigan. Wherever they want to go, we're helping get them there, because at the end of the day, it's going to take bodies, it's going to take work, and it's going to take votes to get President Trump elected.
That's exactly right. And it's good to hear that you can make a difference here in Mississippi. Some of these local elections are so important. I mean, honestly, on a day-to-day, who you're voting for these Mississippi positions, it's probably going to impact you more directly than the president. Not to say that won't impact you directly. We've unfortunately felt the effects of direct impact through Bidenflation from the terrible policies from this administration, including the tie-breaking vote from Kamala Harris to pass the so-called Inflation Reduction Act that really amped up inflation and so many of the economic problems. But Mike, I'm glad to hear that you're really focusing on mobilizing, focusing on local and national. But I can't go anywhere without someone bringing up election integrity.
Yep.
Tell me what that looks like here in Mississippi.
Absolutely. And I said at the beginning three things, and I mentioned two. The third thing is what we at the Mississippi Republican Party, we are calling secure the vote. And what that means is we're working with our county chairmen throughout the state to make sure we have good poll workers in those precincts, to make sure the law is followed, to make sure we have poll watchers in those precincts where we have traditionally had problems with issues with the polling place and the precincts. And then third is to make sure we have enough lawyers on the ground and ready to go, ready to mobilize. Democrats in the past throughout the nation have really done a better job, I hate to say it, than we have, but we are changing that story. We're changing that narrative, and we're doing the stuff on the ground that's necessary in order to get lawyers to the precincts, lawyers out to the counties to make sure if there are any election issues that we're ready to go, and we're ready to go to court to fight it and make sure everyone's vote is counted and that the law is being followed.
The timing is so important, too. I mean, I was a part of the Lawyers for Trump in 2020, and to your point, the way that the Democrats showed up, it was very clear that they were on their A game, whereas a lot of us worked in the administration, so, we took the time away from official work that we were allotted to go and engage in campaign activity, but in a lot of instances showed up and were reading the talking points, or the skinny, if you will, of what to pay attention to at various polls. Having this preparatory groundwork laid, not just from an infrastructure perspective, but training folks who go into polls to know what to look for, that is so important. And I have a feeling it's going to be hugely impactful, especially when it comes to if something goes awry, being able to timely file and make a record of those, either in the courts or making a record of those for the public to know about and engage on and push back.
Absolutely. And the perfect example of this was last year during our statewide elections here in Hinds County. We had a number of the very few Republican precincts we have in Hinds County ran out of ballots. I mean, the Democrat election commissioners, I'm sure coincidentally, I'm doing air quotes for your listeners, coincidentally ran out of ballots in only the Republican precincts. And so, again, smartly, the Democrat lawyers ran to Hinds County Court and said, hey, we need to keep the polling places for all precincts open an extra hour throughout Hinds County, even though it was only the few Republican precincts that ran out of ballots. The Democrats smartly kept all, and the judge issued an order keeping all of the precincts throughout democratically controlled Hinds County open for an extra hour. That's the kind of stuff we have to fight and we have to be ready for.
Yeah, and that's such a distinction. Somehow that was missed in a lot of the reporting. It was, we want to keep the vote open so everyone can cast it. Interestingly enough, you were only able to cast it if you were a Democrat in those precincts because they didn't have enough ballots. Having enough ballots leading up to the election, that just seems like 101 in terms of being prepared.
You have one job, right? I mean, have enough ballots. Make sure the equipment works,
That's right. Well, and we have a sense of it because the number of folks who are registered, that's information that just about everyone is privy to, especially the people working intimately on election preparation leading up to it. All right, so for Election Day, where are you going to be? Are there any big Election Day events either hosted by the Mississippi GOP or things we want to be paying attention to?
Yeah, we're going to be around the state. Actually, my family and I, we're planning to go to a battleground state in the days leading up to November 5th to help out either in Georgia or North Carolina, to help out some of our southern colleagues who are in these really contentious races over there. And we want to make sure President Trump gets over the hump in these battleground states. But on Election Day, we'll be throughout the central Mississippi. We'll have folks throughout, as I mentioned, throughout the rest of the state, making sure voters get to the polls. And one thing that you and Marie talked about, which I want to reiterate to your listeners, if I may, is early voting, absentee voting. I mean, we are doing a better job today, as we sit here today, absentee voting as Republicans than I think we've ever done in Mississippi. And this is a real mindset shift of Republicans who traditionally have not really been a little wary about absentee balloting, absentee voting. But this is a change, and this is a needed change, and this is something that I think we should encourage all of our friends and family to do. If you're going to be out of the county, if you're over 65, if you follow the law and look at those requirements, and they're pretty liberal. But I think we as Republicans should take advantage of what the law allows us to do and vote early, vote absentee.
Yeah, and I told Marie, I've already voted. I'm planning on being out of county, probably out of state on Election Day, so I just want to make sure my vote is cast and counted. And luckily, we have lots of avenues for that here in Mississippi, and I'm excited about the work that's been done on that. Is there any concern with North Carolina? You brought that up. With all of the disasters that have gone through, any concern with folks being able to show up and vote in that state?
Yeah, I haven't spoken with the chairman of the North Carolina Republican Party since the hurricane, but I do hear reports coming out of North Carolina that there are legitimate and serious concerns about the precincts, the availability of people being able to get to the polling places, things like that. I haven't heard this week how much or where we are with only 14 days to go until the election, but I'm praying that that's going to be taken care of and people can actually get to the polls.
Yeah, and it's not the most important thing going on in some of these areas. It really is trying to take account for the disasters that occurred there and getting people back up on their feet. But it does matter to them because this administration really hasn't showed up in ways that is fundamental in terms of what government should do.
Yeah,
Mike?
it's embarrassing when this administration gives more money to illegal aliens than they do to our own citizens after a disaster.
Well, it's unfortunate, but I'm glad you brought that up. If you can stick around for another segment, I'd like to dig in a little bit more on the prioritization of illegal aliens over American citizens. We've seen that in this administration. Know you were involved in that under President Trump, probably have a lot to say, and I'd like to talk about it for our listeners. We've got to take a quick break. We are here with Mike Hurst, Mississippi GOP chairman. We've got him for one more round, so stay tuned. All right, good morning and welcome back to the Paul Gallo Show here on SuperTalk, Mississippi. I'm Mandy Gunasekara filling in this morning for Paul, and I am still joined by Mike Hurst, the Mississippi GOP chairman, former U.S. attorney. Mike, thank you for being so gracious with your time. Before we shift into the discussion around illegal aliens and this administration's disastrous response, there are a couple questions that came through on the text line. Folks are wondering where and how they can get signs either for our local Republicans or for President Trump.
Yep, absolutely. Go to msgop.org and give our office a call, and we can get you set up with signs and get you plugged in.
All right, it's as easy as that. So msgop.com.
.org.
.org.
Yep.
All right. There we go. All right. Well, let's shift. And you brought this up really well. I know when you worked for President Trump, you worked on immigration issues here in Mississippi. The open border is causing all sorts of problems. It's leading to crime. You even had references from the Fed the other day when they were talking about adjusting various rates, referencing the cost of illegal immigration throughout this country. You go to any city, and you can see it. I mean, I was just up in New York. I've been to my fair share of what the left would characterize as sanctuary cities, and you can just see the degradation caused by this influx of illegal aliens coming into areas with already strained resources that are making matters worse. One of the things that President Trump has talked a lot about on the campaign trail is engaging in a mass deportation, and a lot of Americans support this. Could you talk a little bit about how would something like this actually, one, can it be done, and then two, how would something like this actually work?
Right. And what I'll tell you is before I was United States Attorney under President Trump, I was actually Assistant United States Attorney hired during the President George W. Bush years. And even during George W. Bush's years, we enforced our immigration laws. We had one of the largest immigration raids in our nation's history back in 2008. And then when President Trump was in office, we again here in Mississippi led the nation by having one of the biggest immigration enforcement actions in the country. And so what you saw in Republican administrations, especially during President Trump, is making sure our border is secure and making sure that our laws are enforced. And I think that's where we have to start. We have to start with securing the border. And President Trump has said that since he came on the stage maybe back in 2014, 2015, before he was even elected. We have to secure our border. And once we do that, we can reverse the things. You have to remember when President Biden was elected, I mean, almost immediately after he was elected, he rescinded everything that President Trump had put into place to make sure our country and our border was secure. You know, and J.D. Vance said it really well the other day. If we want to fix the illegal immigration issue, we have to stop what Biden and Harris have done. We have to stop catch and release. We have to stop granting asylum to every single person who asks for it, and we have to stop granting mass parole throughout. You know, when people come to this country and they're illegal, this administration, the Harris-Biden administration, are just releasing them. And so that means we've had, at conservative estimates, over the last 3.5 years, 10 million illegal aliens coming to this country. And I think that's just encounters. I think it's probably closer to 15 or 20 million. And if you think about historically, from probably the mid-'80s until 2020, we probably had, the estimates were around 10 to 12 million illegal aliens in this country. And in 3.5 years, Harris and Biden said, hold my beer. And we're gonna show you how to do it. And they just opened up the floodgates, and we've had more than double in 3.5 years. That's how they are trying to change our country in order to make these individuals citizens, and they will vote Democrat. That's the plan. And people have said that, and it's clear as day. And you're right, we have to start enforcing our law, and that's going to require deportations throughout the country to make sure that those who have followed the law. Look, the Republican Party is pro-immigration. We are pro-immigration, but we are pro-rule of law. And we applaud those people who come here, follow our laws, and are sworn in as citizens. If you've ever been to a naturalization ceremony, it is one of the most moving experiences you will ever see. But to have people just flaunt our laws and just come here and disrespect our country like that, those are the ones we have to enforce the law, and we have to send them back home.
Can I interject something here, Mandy? Because you and I talked in the break, and I'll make it quick, but the soundbite from Clinton the other day dressed up as Jimmy Carter. And he said, if we'd have vetted all these people, well, I should do it in my best Bill Clinton. Well, if we would have vetted all these people, then these 3 girls wouldn't have been murdered. And then in the same breath, he goes on to say that Americans aren't having babies, and therefore this is why we need to bring people in across the border. So the conversation Mandy and I were having was, don't you think it would be pretty important to have financial conditions and stability and those types of things in this country where Americans actually felt like they could have children, that they could afford them, that they were incentivized to do that rather than, let's abort them and let's go bring them in from over here.
And Mississippi should be leading on this issue because the chairman or the prior chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee is Benny Thompson. But we all know how terrible of a congressman Benny Thompson has been for over 30 years in Mississippi. I would argue it's one of the reasons our 2nd congressional district is in the state of affairs it's in is because the lack of leadership from Benny Thompson. And we have an incredible candidate, Ron Eller, who can and will defeat Benny Thompson if we can just get the vote out. So I would encourage you all, go to, vote Ron, go to Ron Eller's website, donate, mobilize. We've got to get out the vote and elect Ron Eller and get Benny Thompson out of Congress.
That's exactly right. And it's there's been disastrous actions coming from Capitol Hill, but also from this administration. Kamala Harris has done her best, and mainstream media has tried to carry her lies for her that she had nothing to do with the state of the current border. But I was looking into this morning. Biden, Harris together have taken over 90 executive actions that undermined the stable border situation that they inherited from President Trump. Yeah. He built more miles of wall during his administration, the Remain in Mexico, the catch and release. I'm glad you're talking about these policies because these are the things that made a big difference. And the important point there, too, is you don't need Congress to pass a bill to restore our border to a position of stability.
That's right. Yeah, that's smoke and mirrors. That's a red herring. She's going to blame Congress when she and Biden specifically, intentionally, this was not negligence. This was an intentional act, rescinded everything that President Trump did that was good to secure our border and make our country safer. They completely undid all of that. And, it reminds me, I saw something online that said this is an employee that we as Americans hired 3.5 years ago. She was given tasks that she did not complete. Her supervisor, she stabbed in the back and, is trying to take his job. And she's asking us Americans for a promotion when she's done a terrible job. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, I tell everybody when I'm on the campaign trail, all you have to do is ask your family and friends, are you better off today than you were when President Trump was in office? And the only people, Mandy, who can say they're better off today are illegal aliens.
Yeah, illegal aliens and then the people who are currently in power in Washington, D.C.
And I would say criminals as well. She's very pro-criminal, and we've seen that. Defund the police. Let's give voting rights to terrorists and sex offenders in prison. I mean, it's absolutely insane what this Democratic Party is pushing, and that's why we have to vote Republican this November 5th.
Yeah, that's right. And, one other issue we haven't talked about a lot on the show yet today, but our relationship with Israel and the Middle East. This was another situation where the Biden-Harris campaign or the presidency inherited a stable situation. And the Abraham Accords have essentially been thrown out the window. Israel has been under attack from an emboldened Iran. And then just this, I really would like your opinion on this. I'm not sure if you saw, but there was a leak a leak from the Biden-Harris administration, a deadly serious breach of classified U.S. intelligence detailing Israel's plan to strike Iran for all that they've been doing. The plans were leaked, and they found their way into the Middle East media.
Oh my gosh!
And this administration doesn't know where it came from, but it almost seems planted, because every step, whether public or under this feigned disguise of, well, we're not sure where this came from in the intelligence community, it undermines the standing of our most important ally, Israel.
Absolutely. And if you saw that horrific withdrawal from Afghanistan that the Harris-Biden administration implemented, 13 soldiers killed. I mean, one of the most moving parts of the Republican convention was having those family members of those soldiers who were killed in that devastating withdrawal. I mean, we have lost so much respect and frankly, fear by other countries over the last 3.5 years. As you mentioned, I mean, wars, conflicts, everything is breaking out because we as a country are no longer respected and we're no longer feared. And that's going to change under President Trump.
That's right. And we've got 2 weeks. Everyone has 2 weeks to make a plan, to vote, to get out there. If you want to engage, find ways to engage, to volunteer, or even be a part of the attorneys that are on the ground monitoring the state of election integrity. Mike Hurst, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you. I'm happy that you're out there on the trail really fighting the fight and taking it to the folks. For our listeners, we have got to take a quick break, and we will have our final segment here when we get back.